There's never been a better time to get MWBE certified than now. There are literally billions of dollars available to minorities and women who are certified uh, for government contracts. Uh, it's a way for you to either start your own business if you've never had one, or you've had one in the past and you're looking to try something different, or if you're looking to add more revenue or a different revenue stream to your existing business. It's almost a no-brainer. It takes a little time to get it set up, but once you're done, uh, you basically have this additional resource. You can literally make uh, millions of dollars in revenue passively, sometimes even without providing specific services, what we call box sales, or just sourcing products for certain government agencies. There's nothing wrong with that. So, you don't have to get on the ladder sometimes. Sometimes you might have to get on the ladder. It depends on how far you want to go and what type of procurements are available. What are they asking for? So this video is going to talk to you about the certification process. It's basic information, but I have some pretty good details in there for you. This should be generic to almost any city, state, municipality that has a certification um, uh, available to their communities. And if you have any questions at any time, please post them down in the comments, and I'd be happy to respond to them and try to give you the best answer, or point you to the resource where you can get the exact answer that you may need. So I'm Mike Serrano, and today's video is on the basics of MWBE certification. So if you're not yet certified, you want to watch this video, so let's not waste time and get right to it. For the basic requirements, the company has to be at least 51% owned, operated, and controlled by a U.S. citizen or citizens, or permanent residents that meet the following. You can be black from any African racial group, Hispanic, which can be Puerto Rican, Mexican, Cuban, Central or South American, Dominican, and I know I'm missing probably a couple of others. From the Asian Pacific, the Far East, Southeast, or Pacific Islanders. Asian Indian subcontinent, which would be from India. These are people that are native, literally from India. Native American or Alaskan Native, from the original peoples of North America. And now the same kind of applies to the women-owned business, except you don't have that ethnic requirement, but you have to be at least 51% owned and operated and controlled by U.S. citizens or permanent resident aliens that are women. Women can qualify as both an MBE and a WBE. But in most cases, you can only fulfill on a contract using one, unless that specific agency or contract will allow you to fulfill both. So that's usually 15% each. Sometimes I've seen the WBE certification requirements that they will pay out on 10% of the contract, which I'm not sure I understand why that is, but for the most part, it should be 15% for WBE and 50% for MBE. And generally, you have to be in business for at least a year with one transaction with a client. It could be $1,000, but they want to see that you have some historical information on your taxes that you've done business and you might have to provide a contract or agreement or an invoice and purchases that you may have made for that customer within that first year. So for ownership and control, this gets a bit more into how the organizational structure needs to be. So it needs to be independently owned and operated and controlled, as I mentioned before, by one or more minorities or women. This must be substantial and real. What you're basically going to have to prove is that you have authority, that you're giving direction, that you're actually running the business and you're making day-to-day decisions, and that will include signing the checks, right? So I would say definitely be able to show that. I know that you may need to delegate certain parts of the business to people that work for you, but it has to be clear that you're the boss, that you're in charge, because it will be scrutinized. They will take a look at this and they're going to ask for your bank cards, they're going to ask for statements, financial records. They ask for a lot, so you're going to have to substantiate everything that you say. What they really don't want to see is a white male in the background controlling the business, because this has happened a lot in the past. The whole reason why the program exists is because the majority of those billions of dollars, is over $40 billion, and this is not just New York, this is nationwide. The majority of the contract holders are white males with government contracts and in the commercial sector and in almost every area of business. And the MWBE program exists to help minorities and women get a piece of that pie. And believe me when I say right now, minorities and women are nowhere near touching those numbers. You might have one or two individuals out there that are doing fantastic, but for the most part, minorities and women are not getting their due yet. The opportunity is there. The certification is here. It's up to you to go after the work and qualify and complete that work. So this part here, that if white male has another company on the outside of your company, their company B, they cannot have an interest in your company. They cannot own a percentage of your company. Well, they probably could technically, but if you're applying for certification, you may be denied. And if you're already certified, when you go for recertification, if they see that you've sold off part your business to a non-minority or non-woman, well, you might get denied recertification and you might have to start the process all over again. And it'll be hard for you to get back into the program. So just avoid that altogether. It's not worth it. Now for personal net worth, this may be different in each city or state agency. There are detailed forms that you'll have to complete based on their requirements or criteria, depending on the agency requirements or criteria. Here in New York State, as of the date of this video, your personal net worth cannot exceed $3.5 million. There are certain deductions that you can take, that they will take into consideration. So what does that mean, right? 3.5 million, your personal net worth. That means any of the owners, the minorities or women, individually cannot have a personal net worth of 3.5 million. You could be, the business could have, 100 million, 200, 300 million in revenue, right? It could have millions in revenue. But your personal net worth cannot exceed that. So that gets broken down on the forms of how that's calculated. And just make sure you stay below that number. And if you're at 3.5 million, I would say you're doing pretty good. And I should also mention that when they're looking at your personal net worth affidavit and document, this would include mortgages, firm ownership, up to 500K in your retirement plan. So you have to kind of monitor that. And once you start going above those numbers, you're actually doing pretty good. And you could probably still stay certified. But if you can control how these numbers look, I'm not saying fudge the numbers, but that 3.5 million could come up pretty quickly if you own too much real estate, or you have too much money in certain areas. You might need to shuffle that around a bit. So I already mentioned the personal net worth affidavit. That's usually provided by the certification authority. There's a worksheet that goes along with that. For the most part, like here in New York, it will calculate, your personal net worth. Tax forms, business and personal, state and federal taxes for each owner are required. This will include, of course, all schedules and statements. Depending on your agency, you might need 1 to 3 years. The small business restriction is that you have to have less than 300 employees over an average of 4 calendar quarters. Maybe this may be different for each agency, so wherever it is that you're applying, they will let you know. You must also be independent from other firms. I mentioned this earlier with regards to someone else outside of your company owning a percentage of your company. You can't sell your 25% of your company to someone else. It just, especially if they're not a minority or woman, they basically you have to be independent from them. That's just the way it works. The company has to be able to stand on its own. You must demonstrate, of course, that you have an active business for at least 1 year, and I mentioned that closer in the beginning. So I did mention financial statements. So you may or may not have a financial accounting software in your business if you're just starting out. But if you do, you just have to provide financial statements. They don't have to be audited, but they may ask for them, and just produce it for them. Your profit and loss statements, cash flows, whatever it is that they ask for. You send that over to them. So it will be a compilation report from CPA sometimes. And here I just mentioned this already, the P&L, cash flow, balance sheets, proof of insurance in some cases, especially with the government. You can't do contracts. Sometimes you can't even do procurements, just buying products, pencils, right? And shipping it to them. In some cases, if you get a contract for whatever it might be, they might ask for proof of insurance. Birth certificates. This is a big one. Your birth certificate, both of your parents' birth certificates, they're going to ask for that. If you don't have them, you may want to start looking for that stuff now, or make those requests now, because it could take some time to get copies, let's say, of not just your birth certificate, but your parents' birth. Your parents might be deceased, and they might have been born someplace else, right? It might have been born in Puerto Rico, or one of the islands, or South America, wherever it might be. But you need to present that to them, especially if you're a minority, because they need to see, they need to try to track down your ethnicity to prove minority certification. And then mandatory documents, some forms of ID, which would be state ID, social security card. If you have a passport, that will usually do it. Bank and credit card statements, including signature cards, as I mentioned before. This will help to prove in control, right? Not only that you're a legal alien or a citizen, but also on the banking side, who's controlling the money, right? Who's signing the checks? Loan statements. You might have loans for the business, so they're going to want to see those, because that's going to show up on your financial statements. Corporate documents. How was your corporation, established? Was it an S corp, a C corp, an LLC? They're going to want to see those articles. Certificate of authority that you will get from your state, and all corporate filing receipts, they will be stamped and they will have dates. They want to see that. Now, out-of-state companies can get certified, but I would recommend that you get certified in your home state first, because it can make it easier for you to get certified in another state, because you would have already gathered up all your documentation there. Now, I have to tell you that most states are not as strict as New York when it comes to certification. There are some private agencies, one in particular, that I'm not going to mention here because it's a paid-for certification process. But they put you a bit through the ringer there as well, but they're usually tied in with the city or state agency across the nation. But like I was saying, get certified out of state first, then you can file for an MWBE application. You can file an MWBE application here or in the state that's out of your state, and you may still qualify. Sometimes they may want you to have an address, some business address within the state in order to get approved. And of course, you must have authority to do business in that state. So you have to go to the Department of State in the outside state where you're applying for certification, and you have to get authority. And I think you can do that online. It's pretty low cost, and you should be able to get that approval, that authority, fairly easily. As I mentioned before, some agencies require that you have a physical presence within that state. If you found value in this video, please give me a like below. If you have any questions, please use the comment section for any questions. I will try to answer them as soon as I can. And you could also visit us at the MWBEshow.com and on LinkedIn. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.